Seraphine Voss had learned, early in life, that the quietest people in a room were usually the ones holding the most. She was not loud. She had never been loud. She moved through the healing wing of Ashford Castle, the way water moves through stone, patient, invisible, and slowly, over years, changing the shape of everything she touched. The other healers called her gifted. The guards called her the quiet one. The king had never called her anything, at least not out loud. But she knew he watched her. She had noticed it the way you notice weather before it turns. A shift in pressure, a held stillness. At the winter court gathering, 2 months ago, she had been tending to a young wolf's dislocated shoulder when she felt the weight of someone's attention land on her like a hand. She had not looked up. She had reset the joint cleanly, said 2 calm words of instruction, and only when the young wolf left had she allowed herself to glance across the hall. Draven Ashford, king of the northern packs, alpha of alphas, had been looking at the far wall by then. She had told herself she imagined it. She had not imagined it. The night he announced his betrothal, the great hall of the castle smelled like pine resin and candle smoke, and the particular tension of 300 wolves pretending to be relaxed. Sarah stood near the back with a cup of wine she had not drunk. On the raised dais, Draven stood with his council around him like furniture. He was broad-shouldered in a way that suggested he had been built for difficult weather. His face was the kind of face that gave nothing away, not because there was nothing there, but because he had spent 30 years deciding what got in and what did not. He announced the betrothal to Lady Cecile of the Eastern Shore. His voice was even. His eyes were on the far wall. The hall applauded. Sarah looked at the surface of her wine. It had gone very still, the way water goes still when something large moves beneath it. She stood there a moment longer than was comfortable, then set the cup down on a windowsill and walked out through the servants' corridor, and no one noticed her go, which was its own kind of answer to a question she had not let herself ask. She went to him that night. Not out of hope. She had already closed that door, had been closing it slowly, carefully, for 2 months, and tonight she had simply heard the latch click. She went because there was something she needed to say, or possibly just to hear him say the thing that would make all of it final. He was alone in his study when she knocked. He told her to come in. When he saw who it was, something moved across his face and was gone before she could name it. She told him she felt it, the bond, the particular pull that fated mates feel, that old and inconvenient magic that does not care about politics or bloodlines or the opinions of councils. She told him she had felt it for 2 months, and had said nothing, because she could see that he was saying nothing, and she had wanted to give him the space to be the one who spoke first. He looked at her for a long moment. "You are not what a king requires," he said. 7 words. He had always been economical when it truly mattered. She nodded once. She did not cry. She said, "I understand," which was true, "and thank you for your honesty," which cost her something she could not have named, and she walked out of his study and back to her small quarters in the East Wing and sat on the edge of her bed in the dark for a long time, very still, like something that has just been told the weather is permanent. Within the week, she had filed a transfer request to the border outpost. His signature was on her approved paperwork 3 days later. She traced the shape of it once with her fingertip, the sharp angles of it, the way the D came down hard, and then she folded the paper and packed her bag. The border outpost was cold and understaffed, and needed her badly, which was exactly the right kind of place. She became essential there in less than 2 weeks. The healers were 2 where there should have been 5, the medical supplies were creative in their shortages, and the wolves who came through were often badly hurt in ways that required decisions rather than procedures. Sarah was good at decisions. She had always been good at looking at a difficult thing clearly and choosing what came next. She found out she was pregnant on a gray Tuesday morning in the examination room, with a mug of tea going cold beside her. She sat with the information for a very long time. The room was drafty. Outside, someone was moving barrels across the yard, and the sound of it, that ordinary, grinding sound, was somehow the most real thing in the world. She stood up after 3 hours and went back to work. She told the outpost medics she had been briefly involved with a traveling merchant before she arrived. Her face when she said it was calm and complete, and no one asked twice. because Sarah's face had always been the kind of face that communicated, without hostility, that a subject was finished. She was 5 months along before anyone thought to ask again, and by then the question felt unnecessary. In the evenings, when the work was done, she sat in her small chair by the window and talked to the baby in the low, steady voice she used for patients who were frightened. She described the stars. She described the way the border pines looked in the first snow. She said, with the particular certainty of someone who has survived worse, that everything was going to be all right. She believed it. Not easily, not without effort, but the way you believe something after you have decided it, with your whole weight on it. The general arrived at the outpost on a night of hard frost, carried between 2 of his own soldiers, with a wound in his side that had been badly managed for 3 days. His name was Commander Aldrich, and he was one of Draven's oldest and most trusted men, and he recognized Sarah the moment the fever broke, 2 weeks into his recovery, when he opened his eyes and found her checking his bandages with the same focused quiet she had always brought to everything. He looked at her. He looked at the very visible fact of her pregnancy. He said nothing. She met his eyes briefly. "Rest," she said. He rested. He left the outpost 6 weeks later, cleared for travel and considerably less wounded. He did not say goodbye to Sarah. He rode directly south. Draven knew before the month ended. He came alone. This was the thing that reached her later, when she had time to examine it. Not that he came, but that he came the way a person comes when they are not performing anything. No guard detail, no formal announcement. 1 horse, ridden too hard. He arrived at the border outpost in the middle of a gray afternoon, and Sarah was in the yard checking the supply inventory against a clipboard when she heard the horse come through the gate. She looked up. He got off the horse. He was not wearing formal anything, just a riding coat and boots, and the look of a man who had made a decision somewhere on the road and was still carrying the weight of making it. His eyes went to her immediately. They did not move from her. She went back to the clipboard. He crossed the yard. He stood beside her, not in front, not blocking anything, just beside, and was quiet for a moment in the particular way that Draven was quiet, which was not empty, but full of something he had not yet found a way to release. "I made a mistake," he said. She wrote something on her clipboard. He said he had known about the bond for 3 months before the feast. He said he had signed her transfer papers and then sat in his chair without moving for an hour, which was a thing he had never admitted to anyone and would not have believed himself capable of admitting. He said the betrothal to Lady Cecile had been dissolved in the spring, quietly, without announcement, because he could not say her name without feeling something wrong in the back of his throat, like a word in a language he did not speak. He said he had been a coward. He used that word. It came out with the sound of something that had cost him to locate. "I am not asking you to forgive anything immediately," he said. "I am asking to be here." Sarah finished writing her note. She clipped the pen back to the board. She looked at him then, directly, with the clear, measuring quality she brought to every difficult situation, the look that meant she was seeing exactly what was in front of her and deciding what it was worth. "You can stay in the East Room," she said. "Breakfast is at 6. You will work if you stay here." She walked back inside. He stood in the yard a moment longer, in the wind, which was not kind to anyone in particular. He stayed. He fixed a broken hinge on the supply room door the next morning, without being asked, before breakfast. He sat through a 6-hour vigil with a dying elder wolf, because Sarah said the man should not be alone, and she could not leave the other patients. He did not make it into something. He did not ask her to notice. He learned, over the following weeks, that this was what she was watching for. Not speeches, not grand arrivals, not anything that required an audience. And he kept doing the same small things, even after he understood that she had seen him do them. This was the thing that changed the calculation. The baby arrived on a night of heavy rain, the kind that comes sideways and makes the roof speak. Draven was in the corridor outside the room. He had not been asked to be there. He had also not been able to make himself leave, so he had arrived at a compromise with himself, which was to sit in the hallway on a wooden chair that was slightly too small for him, listening to the rain and the sounds from inside the room, and being very still. When the senior medic opened the door and nodded at him, he stood up so quickly the chair scraped the floor. He went in. Sarah was in the bed with the baby on her chest, and she looked the way people look after they have done something enormous. Not destroyed, not joyful, but deeply, carefully present. The child was small and extremely alert, gazing at the ceiling with the focused attention of someone who had arrived with strong opinions and was already forming more. He sat in the chair beside the bed. He did not touch the child without asking. He looked at Sarah first. She looked back at him. There was something in her face that had not been there in the yard. Not softness exactly, but an opening, a small door left ajar. "Do you want to hold her?" she said. He asked if that was all right. She said yes. His hands, which had spent 30 years learning how to hold things that resisted, weapons, kingdoms, decisions, did not know what to do with something that simply rested. The baby looked up at him from within the circle of his arms with total seriousness, as though she was reserving judgment but was open to evidence. Something moved through his face that he did not try to contain. Sarah watched him hold his daughter and did not say anything, because some things do not need commentary. 3 weeks later, in the quiet of very early morning, when the outpost was still and the only sound was the distant trees, she found him on the step outside the main door with a cup of bad coffee, watching the sky go from black to gray. She sat beside him. They were quiet for a while. The sky changed colors the way the sky does, without asking permission, without making a point of it. "I want to tell you something," she said. He looked at her. "I am not choosing this because of her," she said. "Not because of the bond, or what it means for the kingdom, or anything like that." He waited. "You rode here alone," she said. "You fixed the door. You sat with a dying man for 6 hours in the middle of the night. You asked before you held her." She looked at her coffee. "I needed to see what you did when there was nothing to gain. I needed to see if you would stay when staying was just staying. Not heroic, not useful to anyone, just present." She was quiet for a moment. "You stayed," she said. "That's all it was." He was quiet for a long time after that. "That's not a small thing," he said finally. "What you just told me." "No," she agreed. "It's not." The sun came up over the border pines the way it always did, indifferent to kingdoms, indifferent to mistakes, indifferent to the long and difficult work of two people deciding to try. It lit the yard first, then the roof, then the step where they were sitting, and the warmth of it was ordinary and real and exactly enough. Inside, from the room at the end of the hall, came the small and decisive sound of their daughter, deciding she was awake now and had thoughts about it. Sarah stood. She set her coffee down. She paused in the doorway and looked back at him, not as an invitation exactly, but not as a closed door either. He stood up and followed her inside. The door hinge didn't make a sound.